That's
AKA Young Hustler.
yeah. There's gonna be another hate question.
Hashtag Young Hustler.
Hashtag,
You're
it's
said.
it's so how do this whole digital nomad term and versus the location entrepreneur term? It's funny because I personally didn't really have a beef with the term digital nomad. I personally used it because I didn't really know any of the term. And thankfully, when I met you guys a couple weeks ago, Stuart was like, "Oh, the location independent movement or location independent entrepreneurs," and I actually like that because those alternatives. I feel like that gives it more legitimacy and it's kind of more accurate in terms of like what people do. Um, like I don't really care for titles, but like yeah, I think the word digital nomad has a bit of like a backpacker connotation, or someone very young who's starting out, or just I don't know. It's a trendy term, But in terms of like if this movement's gonna go mainstream and be taken seriously, I think there have to be some stigmas or stereotypes that need to be addressed with that term, So I think location independent entrepreneur, I mean, at the end of the day, we're all entrepreneurs. We're all working for ourselves, basically. I mean, a lot of us are. But, and the main thing that attracts this lifestyle is being location independent. So I think it's a good way I think it'd be a good time to introduce those terms now into the movement, location independent entrepreneur. But yeah, the hashtag digital nomad term, do I identify with it? Yeah, for sure. I mean, I travel every 3 to 6 months, living in a different location. I don't travel as much as some nomads. Some nomads go to a different location every month. For me, that gets a bit tiresome and stressful. I'm more of a slow-term traveler. But yeah, having my location independence, I think that is the most important part of this aspect of this lifestyle. And that's why I only go back to New York once a year. And I had to get my passport more pages in the last year. So for sure, I think we should call it the passport lifestyle, to be honest. But the passport heavy lifestyle. But yeah, I think those are both terms. I think they could be used, but it's just I think it depends on our audience is we're talking to. If we're talking to older generation, we might have to be a little bit more serious and use other terms. But if it's a younger generation, I think people are okay with digital nomad.
Really, at the end of the day, it's like it is all like who gives a shit.
Yeah.
It's being used and it's useful. So people like to identify themselves as something. Citizen of the world, acronym COW.
I like that. I like Citizen of the World.
You're a bit of a cow.
I'm a cow.
Remote workers, corporate escapees. There's
Yeah.
like a whole bunch of them. So, okay, cool. So the other aspect that I wanted to go into a little bit was we've done purpose. Have we done the true global community? So there are positives and negatives to the concept of evolving into a true global community where we are all exceedingly interconnected, traveling a lot more because flights are so cheap, internet is prevalent all over the world. We're talking future stuff, right? So you can have this world where we break down barriers and it's amazing. There's not cultural barriers, there's not physical barriers. But then potentially we become this like homogenous group. It already happens a little bit. People dress Western all over the world. Everybody wears jeans. That's like maybe not the biggest deal, but it shows that cultures do slowly get eroded. What are your feelings about the concept of a true global community? And do you think that it threatens individual cultural identity and like the way when we visit more and more places, like we're going to influence those places. This is going to happen. Positive, negative thoughts?
Yeah, that's a really good question.
Big
A really big, yeah, that's a really big top level question about the basically countries without borders, and I'm a pretty open-minded person when it comes to that. I think something like that is great in terms of the direction it pushes humanity and civilization, because at the end of the day, we're not American, we're not Chinese, we're not Italian, whatever. We're human beings, and that's how we should treat each other. And you could look at the past and you look at nationalism, things like that, and that even religion, that's a very touchy subject for people, and I don't like to divide people. I think when things get to a point where it divides people, that's when things have gone too far. So, I like the idea of country without borders, and yeah, I think you need to have balance. Of, we are, as travelers, we are going to bring our norms and customs to these other cultures, and we are going to influence them. And it's hard to say, it's hard to judge which cultures should be brought over and which aren't, because who are we to judge what is good and what's bad? It's if they want to accept our culture, like who are we to say no, they shouldn't mimic us? But I guess you have to look at it from from a point of view of, is it impacting them in a positive way? And you look at smartphones. I think smartphones can be a good tool, but then you also look at the stupidity and stuff that it causes, and you see people being glued to their phone and not enjoying a present conversation or dinner, or you're missing out these special moments with each other. And I think at that point, the smartphone has taken away from these special things. And you see that, in these cultures that are a little bit more old school, you see the smartphone infiltrate that. And I don't think, it's hard to prevent that, it's technology always going to move forward. But it's a tricky balance. But I think at the end of the day, the more we become a global community, I think that benefits society and the world as a whole, because we are one big family. And you do bring up a very valid point of losing culture and identity, but I don't know, I feel like that is gonna probably happen eventually. I mean, take for me, for example, I'm Chinese American. My dad came from Hong Kong, and he immigrated here. And then my mother, she's Chinese, but she was born here. I can barely speak like any words of Cantonese, my native tongue. I speak more Spanish and Thai than I do my own language. And that's just an example of how I've already lost some of my culture, And whether it's because of global tourism or whatever, as time moves on, I think some culture is going to be lost. But I think there are ways to keep your traditions alive. Like I still celebrate Chinese New Year with my family. Like I have a Chinese middle name that was given to me from my grandfather. I think it's almost impossible to, unless you live in a bubble, it's going to be impossible to hold your cultural identity. So I think as long as you're able to balance it with the modern and the old, and finding a balance and keeping what's important to you from your culture, and keeping that intact, I think that's a balancing line. But I think my brother married an Ecuadorian girl. I'm probably gonna marry outside of my culture. My brother's got a white girl, and it's just like, like it's not.